Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining my presentation here. I'll be talking about expanding opportunities for intercultural development through collaborative online international learning. My name is Kevin Ottoson. I'm a lecturer at Nagoya Women's University, and I'll be talking to you today about my project that I've been working on with collaborative online international learning. I'll talk about how I set up the project, as well as some of the results, some implications, and also suggestions for people that are interested in taking on collaborative online international learning in their own classrooms. Just a little bit of background about me and why I took on this collaborative online international learning in my classroom. Well, basically, my area of interest is in study abroad, particularly short-term study abroad. And well, because of the recent pandemic, many of the overseas exchanges have been canceled, and probably we won't be back to the levels that we saw in 2019 for a while. But we all know that the Ministry of Education and our own universities have goals for internationalization. And so we want to work towards those goals. And yet, for many universities, study abroad has been seen as the vehicle to reach those internationalization goals, or part of the vehicle, or I should say, one of the many vehicles. But well, we can't, that's one thing that's not available right now to our students. So I thought about virtual cross-cultural exchanges like COIL as a way to provide opportunities for my students to interact with their peers and other cultures. And virtual cross-cultural exchanges like COIL are quite interesting because they provide equitable and affordable opportunities and basically let all students in the classroom participate in these exchanges. It's not just for the students who have the means or the time to study abroad, but all students in your classroom can participate. So part of this study, the goal was to understand, what do students perceive that they develop in terms of intercultural competence? And also, what are their attitudes towards foreign language learning after participating in a virtual cross-cultural exchange program? Some of the theoretical framework that informs how I teach and see development in my classroom is in part due to Deardorff's 2006 process model of intercultural competence, where Deardorff describes intercultural competence is the ability to effectively and appropriately interact across cultures and intercultural situations. And this competence starts with the requisite attitudes of openness, curiosity, and respect. These attitudes can then lead to deeper levels of knowledge of one's own culture, but also other culture, and also skills of interacting in intercultural situations. And it can also lead to a change in perspective or mindset. So in my classroom, I really focus on working on those attitudes of openness, curiosity, and respect, and also with short-term study abroad programs. Perhaps that's the most realistic development that can be seen or assessed in a short amount of time. Also, Maslow's hierarchy of needs informs how I see my students' needs. As you've probably seen from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the base, there's we have our base level needs of food, rest, water. And then we have hygiene, safety, and then it moves up towards friendship, relationships. And then we can further on up to higher levels of self-actualization. For many of my students, before they participate in a study abroad program, they have a lot of worries and concerns about their safety, and their hygiene, about food. So if they're preoccupied with these concerns, it might be difficult for them to develop positive relationships with people in those cultures. Same thing with COIL programs. If students are maybe overly concerned with communicating, and they might have worries about whether they can establish positive relationships with their group members, it might be difficult for them to accomplish their own goals as well as your own goals through the program. And also all parts contact hypothesis, which suggests that under certain conditions, when two groups of people work together for a common goal, they can reduce prejudice. And this is, key aspect of developing intercultural competence. I've been talking about COIL, but just to give you a definition of what COIL is, it's a globally networked learning and virtual exchange, a new teaching and learning paradigm that promotes the development of intercultural competence across shared multicultural learning environments. So COIL can take various different approaches. I use the basic, or what's called basic COIL project, where it's mostly just an ice-breaking endeavor, where you have like a class, and it's just a part of your class. The COIL project is not the entire focus of the class, but it's just an aspect of your class, and you're partnered up with a group of students from a different university. And for my project, I had students at my university. They're third year childhood education majors. And they were partnered up with first year Japanese majors at a public university in northern China. These students in my class are taking an English class that's basically to help them develop their English abilities so that they can use those when they teach in their own classes in elementary or kindergartens after they graduate, just to build up their English communicative competence and ability and competence using English. The first year Japanese majors, they're taking an English communication skills class as a part of their requisite for graduation. So we are in this COIL project, we are just each week we're doing weekly chats about different topics, and each week they make a presentation, and then that leads up to their final presentation, which they give over LARC, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. This is the project overview. There's 4 phases for this basic COIL project, and there's 7 weeks. We have a prep phase, week 0, and then the activity here. So you can see in the first, or week 0, we just focus on downloading LARC and creating an account, joining your group. We try to even it up usually. So there's 2 Japanese students, 2 Chinese students, or maybe 3 Japanese students, 4 Chinese students. So it's not always even, but in this week, they just try to join their group. Then the first week, which is always important, is the icebreaker. And this week, students give a self-introduction, they upload it, and it's usually about 90 seconds or less. And then also in the chat, they get experience using that, and we ask them to give self-introduction with 2 truths and 1 lie about themselves, and their group members have to guess which is the true, which 2 statements are true, which one's a lie. Then we get into phase 2, which is kind of the meat of the project here, where the students research and discuss general information about their assigned cities and create PowerPoint slides. So each group has a Chinese city and a Japanese city that they need to research, compare, and also contrast. And each week they researched and discussed different aspects about the city. So you can see in week 3, they discussed the history and relics of the cities. Week 4 discussed the culture and the food of the cities. 5, customs and lifestyles in the cities. And then in week 6, they put all their slides together that they've been working on and record a group presentation and upload that through onto LARC. Then finally, they have in the phase 4, week 7, a reflection where they fill out a survey and a questionnaire. So before we started this COIL project, my partner in China and I, we emailed each other, met up online, and tried to share our objectives that we had for our classes. And we found that we have similar objectives, and we came together with some objectives for this project where we wanted students to improve their knowledge of their own culture as well as other cultures. And we thought that by having them compare and contrast cities in both China and Japan, they might be able to do this. We also wanted them to provide opportunities for students to communicate in English on a variety of topics, give students an opportunity to learn from each other, improve their English language skills, improve their intercultural skills, for example, attitudes and knowledge, and also improve virtual learning skills. For me, I really wanted my students to have an experience where they could communicate in English with students from China, because for a lot of my students that want to become teachers, the reality is that they're going to have students from different countries or parents of children from different countries in their classrooms. I thought this would help give them some experience and some more confidence in terms of intercultural communication. And for many of the students, they'll have Chinese students in their classroom. So I thought this was a very good opportunity for my students. We used the software that we used was LARC Suite. This collaboration platform allowed us to do video chat, text chat, joint presentations. It's quite useful. And also it's a type of software that can be used in China as well as Japan. So that's sometimes that's not always easy to find something that both students in both countries can use. On the Japanese end, we used Google Forms for questionnaires and the reflections, and we used PowerPoint for making weekly and also final presentations. So the methodology from this study, we had 34 students. They're all third-year childhood education majors at a women's university in central Japan. The survey that we used, I adapted from COIL.JALT2021 and Bender Slack. So I changed it just a little bit for the needs of my students. And then finally, they were given an open-ended questionnaire with the questions of what did you learn? Why is that important? And how will that help you in the future? I'd like to go over some of the results of the survey and also the questionnaire for you, so you can kind of see what the students said. So just in terms of the survey from COIL.JALT2021, Bender Slack in 2016, the first part of the survey, the students were asked to rate their understanding of the following aspects of Chinese culture. Pop culture, history, and education were rated higher. There was a higher, we're looking at a rating from 1 to 10. So you can see in these three aspects, there was a bigger jump compared to other topics. Also, in terms of language proficiency, the biggest difference was from the pre and post of listening, as well as collaborative online international learning. In terms of other aspects of their engagement in socioeconomic or educational issues, global competence in terms of like interest in international perspectives and issues, as well as their understanding of the impact of their school philosophy, were rated higher than the others. Also, in terms of attitudes, intercultural attitudes, statements like it's fun to interact with people from other cultures. I'm more comfortable dealing with people who are culturally different, and I enjoy interacting with people from different cultures were rated higher than some of the other ones. Also, I'm very careful when interacting with people from other cultures. And when I interact with people from other cultures, I try to get as much information as possible. These were the ones that were rated higher than the others on the survey here. Also, it's kind of interesting, we have statements like, I think people from other cultures are narrow-minded. So the pre, we have 1.94, post 1.74 in terms of a Likert scale rating. So 5 is strongly agree, 1 is strongly disagree. So it went down here, as well as I think that my culture is better than others. It was rated higher at the beginning and lower at the end. Just some of the reflections from when students were asked about what did you learn, why is that important, and how will that help you in the future. Students talked about in terms of when at the beginning, they were quite worried. They had a lot of anxiety about using a foreign language. They also had anxiety about working with Chinese students. One student mentioned that she was very scared when talking to Chinese people. Her cousin's mother's from China, and she had heard that some of the people there might have anti-Japanese feelings. So this is kind of the reality. The students were quite anxious about using English and also working with Chinese students. They were also concerned about virtual communication with people they don't know. The student mentioned that I cannot read their facial expressions and movements, especially when you're texting. So that's an issue in terms of communication. After COIL, we noticed some of the students talked about a difference in attitude. So some students felt that there wasn't a deep barrier when interacting with foreigners. I was able to reduce my prejudice. The beginning, this person had some resistance when talking with people, but now it's gone, and I think I've learned about their culture. Also, we see some more attitudes of curiosity and openness here. This student mentioned that I feel that I have developed a mind to accept differences in culture. And this student mentioned that she'd like to be more involved with foreigners in the future. Participant 9 here said that she's no longer afraid of interacting with people from other cultures, and she wants to learn more about other cultures. In terms of attitudes and knowledge, students, you'll see that some of the reactions, they talk about attitudes and knowledge. I thought this was quite interesting what participant 33 said here. I have to keep in mind that even if we speak the same language, if we have a heart that wants to understand, we can accept each other. And another student, participant 12, talked about how it was a lot of fun to learn about a new culture that was different from her own. Other comments talked about how this experience will be helpful for them in the future in terms of teaching in the classroom. So in terms of English classes, when they have to teach English classes to their elementary school students, they can talk about cultural differences and use their own experience. Other participants saw this as useful in terms of interacting with students who might be from a different country or their parents who might be from a different country. Also, participants talked about how this COIL experience helped them become more proactive, more sekyokteki, more aggressive or assertive, I should say. This participant talked about if I become a teacher in the future, because if I have anxiety or resistance when communicating with ALTs, I will not be able to fulfill my duties. And then this student, participant 22, said, I realize that nothing will change unless we take action for ourselves. So some of the tasks are a little vague and it's not explicit on what they're supposed to do. The students have to kind of decide what they want to do, negotiate, and this requires them to be more assertive in that. Also, other participants talked about how this will be helpful for them in the future in terms of planning and keeping a busy schedule, as well as using technology. Also, I guess we can talk about just we can summarize some of the results here from the surveys. Students self-reported heightened understanding of different aspects of Chinese culture. They also described an increase in language proficiency, as well as an increase in intercultural attitudes. Interesting, though, that the students didn't mention, wasn't really mentioned in an improvement in language proficiency in their reflections. The students focused more on talking about how their anxiety, they talked about how before they took on this project, they had fear and anxiety and concerns about communication, and how they increased their interest in other cultures and knowledge, and how they saw this project as being useful for their future in terms of being a teacher when they have to introduce cultures and also interact with students and parents. And they also saw the importance of planning and being proactive. So just to kind of sum up the results here, there was an initial anxiety about being able to communicate or being disliked by their Chinese group members. And this was largely unrealized. The participants also described development in intercultural attitudes in terms of curiosity, openness, and respect, and some surface level knowledge of China. They also described a realization of the importance of being more proactive. They also saw this as being useful for them in the future as teachers, and also they talked about being more comfortable in using technology for work and communication. So some implications from this study, well, more attention and care should be given to students' initial anxieties about interacting and collaborating with students from other cultures. And this can be done by putting more focus on the ice-breaking activities. It's really important at the beginning for students to become comfortable using the technology, the software, and also communicating in their group and getting to know the people in their group, not only their Japanese partners, but also their students, like in my case, the students in China. This can really reduce their anxiety, and I think this can kick off a really nice project for you. COIL projects can also offer opportunities for students to report a development in their own intercultural attitudes and knowledge. Some limitations, of course, is the number of participants, narrow time frame. It'd be better to take a look further down the road. Social desirability bias, students might be answering in ways that they think I want to hear or that is socially appropriate. Also, some suggestions for future studies is to take a look at a variety of different COIL projects. More investigation should be done. There's different projects out there. Students are different majors, minor childhood education majors, which are very different from maybe English language majors or engineering majors. Take a more longitudinal time frame. Try to look 1 year, 2 years, 5 years out. What's the impact down the road for these students? Some mixed method studies to explain some of the data, the surveys that you get, as well as perspectives from students from partner institutions. What do the Chinese students or what do the American students think? Also, communicate the goals and objectives of your project to your students and stakeholders so that people know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think there'll be more buy-in, and they'll see the importance of the project. And also consider how this project fits into the larger mission of your institution so that you can communicate that this is meeting the goals or the mission of the university or the institution that you're working for. These are just some of the references that I highlighted earlier. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer them, or if you want to talk about this in general, if you want more information about setting up a COIL project, I'd love to help you out. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, please don't hesitate to email me or contact me. Thank you.